Hey everybody, I'm Summer, and today I want to talk about how to get your snake out of their enclosure without getting bit. This is a dilemma I see a lot of people posting about online, just the fear of reaching into the snake's enclosure and how to overcome that. And a lot of people will just say, well, you just have to get used to getting bit. You know, getting bit is part of keeping snakes, it's part of the hobby, you just have to get used to it. And to some degree that's true. You don't want to be living in fear while you're working with your snakes. You know, you want to be comfortable and confident with them. But at the same time, you should avoid getting bit when at all possible, not just for our own sakes, but for the sake of the animal. We don't want to be putting them in a stressful situation all the time where they feel the need to strike and lash out at us. So I'm going to walk you through what I do when I need to get my snake out for maintenance or emergencies. And although there's no 100% guarantee this will work, I have a really high success rate with this, and I hope that these methods and techniques will help you out as well. The first thing you're gonna have to do is figure out where the snake is in the enclosure. Is it in a hide? Is it out on a branch? Is it roaming around? And once you've pinpointed the snake's location, you'll wanna then look at the body language to kind of know where you're starting from. So is the snake asleep? Is it already alert and watching? Kind of get a good gauge for what the mood of the snake is at the time. Once you've found the snake, then you wanna think about, well, how are you going to be accessing it? Is your cage top opening where you're gonna have to reach down? Is the cage front opening, sliding, swing doors? Or you may have a rack system where you pull it out. This is all going to affect the angle and approach that you're going to have to take when you go to get the animal. So while you're assessing the situation, you also wanna make note of cage furnishings. Are there any items that are in your way, that are standing between you and the animal? And if those are easily removable without disturbing the snake, I would go ahead and get those out. You know, you don't want the snake to have anything extra that they might be able to cling onto in the process of you getting them out. If you can eliminate as many of those variables as possible, it's gonna be easier when you actually do go to get the snake. Another thing to think about regarding the snake's location and the cage furnishings is if the snake is inside a hide that has a bottom, or if they're on a branch or something that is removable, you can often just take out that element with the snake on it, and not having to actually contact the snake will eliminate a lot of stress for you and the animal. And then once the animal's out of the cage, a lot of that fear goes away in ourselves. And also the snake, they're removed from kind of their comfort zone, so they kind of switch into a different mode as well. So assuming that you've located the snake, you figured out how you're gonna reach in, kind of your trajectory, the next thing that I like to do is alert the snake to my presence. And the way that I do this is using a hook. So I will take a snake hook like this one, and I will gently just kind of rub, not tap. A lot of people say tap training. I don't like tap the snake. I just touch the snake with the hook, and that just tells them, hey, there's somebody here. It wakes them up if they're asleep, and also if they are potentially in a food mode, it can help to release them from that state of mind and kind of give them the signal over time that this means not food. And that's not 100% necessary. Many people don't tap train their snakes at all. I personally like to do so because I find that it's like an extra tool of communication between me and the animal and helps us to sort of be on the same page. But regardless, the next step is going to be the big one, actually reaching in and getting the animal out. And that's the hard part, right? Sticking your hand in the cage. So how do we do this? So the main thing you want to avoid is coming at the snake head on. You don't want to just stick your hand right in front of the snake's face, not just for your own protection, because if you do that, you're putting yourself in the prime strike zone, but also because doing so is very likely to cause a defensive reaction in the snake because they want to protect their head at all costs. They don't want something attacking their head that's going to potentially kill them. What you want to do instead is come at them from the side, behind, and if you can, underneath. Coming from the top is also a kind of predatory thing. Birds and whatnot will often come from the top to pick up a snake. So coming from the top is also scary for them, although sometimes unavoidable if you have a top opening enclosure. But if at all possible, try to come from behind or the side and scoop them up underneath and try to get a good part of their body, like the midsection, so they feel very supported and don't feel insecure when they're lifted up. The thing is that sometimes that's not really possible because of the way that our cages are set up and where the snake may be positioned. Sometimes you have no choice but to go in and they're staring right at you and you're like, oh, this is intimidating and I'm kind of nervous. So what I would suggest is having a snake hook on hand. So if the snake is in a precarious position, you can use the snake hook to steer the upper third of the body, the head of the snake, and use your other hand to get up underneath. That way, you're not putting your hand right in the face of the snake. There's a good, 18 inches in between. So the snake isn't gonna be able to lash out at you or reach you as easily if they do have a bad reaction. It gives you a little peace of mind and also just gives you more control over the snake without putting yourself in harm's way, so to speak. Now, another thing that's really important is that you want to be as quick, calm, and confident as possible when you're reaching in and grabbing your snake. The reason is the more that you stand there hemming and hawing and second guessing how you're gonna get at them, the more you're making them nervous. The more nervous you are, the more nervous they become because all this tension starts building in the air. You know, it's like, what are they gonna do next? You're both wondering it, and neither one knows. And that's why I really suggest before you actually try to grab the snake, you've already assessed it and kind of mapped out in your head how you're gonna do it. That way, when you go to retrieve the animal, you can just do it and be done with it. But, you know, there's always the chance, nobody's perfect. Maybe you try to do it, but you weren't quite fast enough and the snake got out of your hand and now it's roaming around and it's a little scared, so it's moving kind of fast. What do? I would say you stop. You let the snake calm down, you come back later and try again. And I say that because you're intruding in the snake's space to begin with. That's a given the circumstances we're getting our snake out of the enclosure. But now, not only are we intruding on their space once, we're intruding on it multiple times. We're poking them and prodding them and grabbing at them, and then they're getting away, and then we're doing it again, and then they're getting away, and then we're doing it again. And it's this cat and mouse game, and it's extremely stressful for you because you're losing faith in yourself and becoming less and less sure of your actions. And the snake is just getting assaulted basically by you and not able to escape, which is just going to cause that fear response to heighten even more and increase your chances of getting bit or having a worse defensive reaction. And also, it's not helping to build a trusting relationship. So if you feel that the interaction is going downhill, just cut it off. Take a break, go get a cup of coffee. If it's not an emergency, you can come back tomorrow and try again when you've had time to think about what you did and what went wrong and how you could have done it differently, and you can give it another shot. So while we're on the point of non-emergency, I do want to mention that in general, I am a big advocate for something called choice-based handling, which my friend Lori Torini has quite a bit of content about. So I'm going to direct you to her channel to check that out. But to sum it up, it's essentially a practice in which you avoid intruding on your animal and ripping them away from their enclosure, and instead you facilitate a relationship where they feel comfortable coming out of their enclosure and you can handle them that way. So that's a really, really rewarding way to work with your animals and something that I strive to do with all of mine. But I do think it's really necessary and important that as a keeper, you feel completely comfortable getting your snake out, because it is gonna be necessary for some maintenance and medical emergencies, and you don't wanna have that fear. So it's definitely something that you need to work through being able to do, but I did wanna point out that alternative, especially for recreational handling just for fun. So that might have seemed like a lot and like this super long process, but in practice, it's actually all happening pretty simultaneously in very quick succession, so it really doesn't take long at all, and the more that you do it, the more comfortable and seamless it all is. So now what I'm gonna do is cut to some footage of me actually doing this, getting my snakes out of their enclosure. It's gonna be different snakes, different cages, different scenarios, and hopefully you'll be able to see how I employed some of these techniques to help me get my snakes out successfully without getting bit. Fingers crossed. helpful for you. This is something that I feel pretty passionate about because I personally struggled with this a lot when I first started keeping at 11 years old. I remember I would have to ask my mom to get my snakes out for me because I was too nervous to reach into the cage. So it's something that I had to work through over time and become comfortable with. So I hope that this gives you a good platform and that you can use some of these techniques to help you get over that fear as well. So let me know in the comments below if this is a dilemma that you are currently facing or have faced in the past. Maybe you're an experienced keeper now, but you weren't always, and is this something that you had to overcome too? Anyway, once again, my name is Summer. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.